This is the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom show, The Wake Up Call on WCOM LP, Chapel Hill and Carver, 103.5 on your FM dial, or live streaming at WCOMFM.org. You can also watch the show on the People's Channel after a week's delay on Thursday night at 10 p.m., Friday morning at 6 a.m., or Tuesday at noon. The show will also be available on our YouTube channel, Wilf Wake Up Call. I'm Iris Schwinzer here with our host Lori Hoyt and Miriam Thompson, Emily O'Hare on the camera, and today our guests are Norma Reyes and Leslie Alanis.
Thanks, Iris. We're delighted to have two young people on our show today who've been working with farm workers, the Immokalee workers. Our Wilf's sister Miriam is here to also be a co-host today. And this was a perfect day to have these guests because it's International Workers' Day, and Ayers just informed me that it started in 1886, so it's got a venerable history and evolving meaning for the day, which started down in this country, then went to Europe, and I think isn't always observed in this country as much as it used to be, but I think it's reviving, especially with our teachers out there today. Miriam was there today. Maybe she can tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll be talking to Norma and Leslie.
I just want to comment on how important the day is, and it's called International Workers' Day. It is interesting that it is celebrated May Day all over the world. Labor Day here is in September, but many of us, because it was started by the Socialist and Communist Party in recognition of the massacre at Haymarket, it was promoted by the Socialist and Communist Party in honor of those who were massacred at Haymarket. And it continues now to be a worldwide holiday. So couldn't be better to have the teachers march today for better conditions, not just for teachers, but for all staff working in the school to support students. So thousands of teachers descended on the General Assembly today in gorgeous weather, and it was cooler in the morning, and then Reverend Barber greeted them, the wonderful Reverend Barber running the Poor People's Campaign greeted them right outside the legislature, where they went in to lobby and really fight for our kids. I mean, that was their whole purpose, is to fight for our kids.
And that just showed their commitment to justice, that they were not just going for their own having a fair income, but also for all the support staff, the janitors, everybody who cafeteria workers, everybody who works at the school has an impact on the children and interact with the children, and it's all part of teaching. And I think one of the slogans I heard today watching it on television was that they were more interested in outcome than income, which I think just tells, where their values are. Mm-hmm. So back to Miriam and back to our guests, Norma and Leslie.
Well, we really wanted to start with you and who you are, what you're doing on campus, what your majors are, what got you interested in the Immokalee workers' struggle and the food program. So it's all yours. Oh, and also please talk about how you're trying to organize the student body to really put pressure on Wendy's and some of the other big corporations that are joining the Fair Food Program.
So hi, my name is Leslie Alanis, and my major is Environmental Studies. I'm part of the SFA at UNC, the Student Farm Worker Alliance, and we're trying to focus on campus, I guess, the National Boycott Wendy's campaign to get Wendy's to boycott Wendy's to get them to join the Fair Food Program.
First and foremost, thank you for having us here. My name is Norma Reyes. I'm a junior at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. My majors are Global Studies and Political Science. And as Leslie said, we are students in the SFA organization, Student Farm Worker Alliance on campus. Our goal is to put pressure on the Wendy's on campus so the Wendy's Corporation as a whole can join onto the Fair Food Program. Personally, how I got involved, my spring semester of last year, I believe, we had a speaker come into the classroom and they talked a little bit about the program and about they worked in the building that they have in Raleigh. And she described the campaign, and for me at least, I come from an area in Western North Carolina where agriculture is really big and it's really important. We actually have like the Apple Festival every year, so like that just shows how important agriculture is to our county. And every summer you see, I would see a lot of migrant workers coming to pick the harvest, pick the tomatoes, the cucumbers, the bell peppers, all of the produce that goes into our food and that you see at the local grocery stores. And there's really the disconnection where unless you actually see the farm worker out in the fields picking the produce, you don't really know where it comes from a lot of the times. You don't think about it. I think it's like, yeah, it comes from a farm, but you don't think about the person that actually does the labor. So when the speaker came to my class in the spring semester of last year, and she just told us a little bit about the campaign and about how it was focused on the human rights for farm workers, it really did touch home for me, just because I was exposed to farm workers. My parents are also friends with a lot of people who are farm workers, and just having that personal connection to some of them, and just knowing that they do face injustices and realizing that there are people besides myself who care about this was really important. And I think that's what really motivated me to join SFA. It's like, okay, there's another group of students, people my age, who know that these farm workers face a lot of like unhumane conditions, and they're also here and they're willing to fight to help them get their human rights.
No, it's another mic. There's a mic for you. We'll push it over closer to her. Yeah.
And get real close.
Get real close to the
So,
mic.
how I got involved with SFA at UNC, the Student Farm Worker Alliance chapter at UNC, was through a class. It kind of all started in the class I took my freshman year. I'm a junior now, so that was freshman year. And it was a class about immigration, and we read a couple of books about the abuses that farm workers face in the fields. And it got us really interested, because for each one of the books we read in the class, we had the speaker. We had like speakers come in, usually the author, but for this one we had the CIW, this Coalition of Immokalee Workers, and so they gave a really cool presentation they talked about the abuses that farm workers face in the fields, such as like they talked about like the sexual harassment that is rampant in the fields, and then they also talked about like modern day slavery cases that they found. I think they also did sort of like a physical. They actually got us on. We made like a pyramid with people, and they told us that pretty much the farm workers were the people at the bottom holding up the pyramid, and the consumer, we were the consumer at the top, and in the middle were these like major corporations, with either the farms themselves or the restaurants, sort of like Wendy's. That's what Wendy's was. And so they've been working on this the Boycott Wendy's campaign for 6 years. Kind of going back to how I got involved. Yeah. So, and then Mia Shang, which is a student that took the class together, she started the SFA chapter here at UNC, and she's abroad now. So she's gonna come back next semester. But it kind of all really started to get put together earlier this year. And so it's been pretty good, but it's been interesting kind of like doing these things. It's been difficult to do these things without her. And so the point of the campaign is to put it's like a national campaign to put pressure on Wendy's for them to join their Fair Food program. And a lot of the stuff that has been going on with like at UNC is that they kind of just ignore us when we do protests, when we organize, when we do events, when we tell people. CDS, Campus Dining Services, and the Chancellor and the administrators just ignore us when we try to educate them about these issues.
I just want a postcard, very interesting of what you were saying, that students, community leaders, and farm workers. So we're really trying to build a whole support group for this, for the young people who are taking on this campaign, and it's such an important one. Farm workers are calling for a national boycott of the Wendy's, demanding that instead of cheap for $4 deals, we've seen that all over television and radio, the hamburger giant put human rights on the menu. And you talked about sexual violence, forced labor. I mean, these are often prison camps, and children younger than 10 working in the field, so it's child labor. And maybe you want to talk about some of the other giants that have joined the campaign, and what we can do to help you put pressure on Wendy.
Well, I think you brought up the, for me specifically, like the child labor. I took a class last semester about African American literature after this, after emancipation, so it was like slave literature. And one of the things they mentioned on there, a lot of slave narratives discussed how women would be in the fields with having like another like toddler taking care of their baby, and that's exactly what you see in the fields. Present day, you see a mother who has like a small child, and she has the child next to her, and then she has a child that's maybe a couple years older taking care of the baby because she has to work, and the other children that are able to actually pick up like a bucket and stuff, produce in it, are in the fields working. So yeah, you see a lot of instances of also like child labor and sexual assault and sexual violence towards not only just women but members of the LGBTQ+ community. I think a lot of times we don't realize that there's so many different kinds of people that are doing farm worker work, that are in the fields picking the produce. You have people that are come from marginalized indigenous communities back in their home countries. You have, of course, women and men and children, and you have members of the LGBTQ+ community. You also asked us to talk about some of the other major companies that have joined onto the program. I think one of the biggest that comes to my mind is Walmart. Walmart is a huge giant, and they've joined onto the Fair Food program. So have all of Wendy's other major competitors such as Burger King, McDonald's, Taco Bell, Trader Joe's, Chipotle. You have a lot of major companies that have signed on to it, which just brings up the question, well, why hasn't Wendy's signed on if all of its competitors are signing on to it? It's like, well, you know, McDonald's, fast food giant, like the biggest fast food giant in the world, they're paying a pound more for, like a penny more for the pound of tomatoes, but Wendy's, you know, who you would think would sign on as well to be at the same level competition-wise and marketing-wise, has not. So it's a little bit eye-opening, and just kind of makes you question the leadership within Wendy's, that if their competitors are all doing it and it seems to be going really well for them, then why haven't they signed on to something that benefits human rights?
So it sounds like, though, that a lot of work has been done, that all these other major corporations have signed on to. Now, what they've signed on to is to pay a fairer price, so that translates back down to the farm worker getting a fairer wage. Is that how it works?
Yeah, there's a couple other components to it as well.
Yeah, that's what I'd love to hear about, yeah.
Yeah, so the Fair Food program is enforced by a third party, it's monitored by a third party organization. It's called, what did I just forget it?
The
Fair Food Council.
Fair Food Standard Council.
Yeah, Fair Food Standard Council. And so they pretty much make sure that these things don't actually, so I guess the requirements of the Fair Food program would be to pay an extra penny per pound for a pound of tomatoes, which would essentially sort of double farm workers' wages.
Wow.
And then just
A
pretty
penny a pound. It would double
Penny a
their
pound.
wages.
I mean, when you think of that, it takes so little to make things more fair. It's heartbreaking.
yeah.
It's heartbreaking, but, you know, it sounds like a lot. I mean, that's really interesting to me, that this work is in process. This Fair Food Council has been working so hard that these other corporations, because I'm sure that wasn't easy, you know, to get Walmart and McDonald's. So that's the hopeful sign that this advocacy really does have an effect. And that's what we've got to keep in mind when, you know, just like our teachers out there in Miriam on a hot day.
Cooler in the morning.
Cooler in the morning, yeah. you know, that there is hope that that kind of advocacy and that kind of struggle can make a difference, which is really making Wendy's look all the more.
Well, why don't you talk about what we can do to do exactly that?
Yeah.
What does advocacy look like that listeners and viewers can come to the support of the students?
Yeah.
Because it's a major campus campaign. And the
Yeah.
students are really helping
So
lead
Wendy's is
the
on
struggle.
campus is what makes them a
That's
real
right.
target for
That's right.
you as students. And why is the university, why not have a different company than Wendy's if they,
Well, they
yeah,
are
like
going to
you-
talk to that.
Yeah, let me,
Go ahead.
So I also wanted to add, I forgot to mention some of the things that the program, the Fair Food Program also entails. So, and it incorporates zero tolerance for sexual slavery, sexual harassment, and modern day slavery. And this is actually, like I said, it's monitored by the Fair Food Council, but Fair Food Standards Council. In addition, they have like a 24-hour call, like a line for people to call if anything comes up, if
Wow.
you see anything, which is really good because it's available in 3 languages. So it's in English, Spanish, and Creole, which are the 3 languages most predominantly spoken by the farm workers. And so it's available 24 hours for people to call. And what happens too is that if a worker or anyone gets caught, doing something that they're not supposed to, anything that they're not supposed to, they the Fair Food Program sort of gets informed of that person, and so they won't get hired again at any other fair food farms, which is I really like about that. And also in addition to like the penny per pound, as you mentioned, it's like a very little amount. It's nothing really. And so what really got us mad is that we actually had a recent event at school, and it was sort of to get at Wendy's because they recently allotted $25 million towards their social media campaign. As you guys know, they're like very like prominent on Twitter. They're known as like very like I don't know, down with the young people or whatever. I don't know. They're like people like them because they're funny or whatever. And so they allotted $25 million to that, but not 1 penny for human rights. And that was what we put on our banner. It was like a massive tweet.
yeah, so they do a lot of public relations and cute stuff
Yeah.
to sound good, but then when it comes down to social justice for the people who are picking the food for them, they're not.
I just want to, I want you to mention those telephone numbers, because people really should not leave the show without action. And we have a Wendy's right here in Carrboro that we're talking about.
That's right.
There's a Wendy's on campus, which the students are focusing on. We can put pressure on Wendy's right here in Carrboro. It is intolerable that their corporate offices are tolerating this kind of abuse of farm workers, many of whom, by the way, are immigrants and could be threatened with deportation if they are,
complain. But that's
to
why
put
this
pressure
Fair
on
Labor
them.
Council is wonderful, because it sounds like they really pay attention. It's not just a name only, and that it's a good enforcement thing that the workers know is there to protect them.
People can go on the website fairfoodprogram.org, and we should keep mentioning that on our broadcast. Fairfoodprogram.org, which will give the whole history that Leslie and Norma are talking about.
Yeah.
But I just wondered if you would give numbers that people can call and how we can become more engaged in supporting the student campaign.
Yeah, so I actually have 2 phone numbers that listeners can call into if they're interested. One is the phone number for the Office of the Chancellor.
Oh, great.
Love it.
I've been wanting to call that person anyhow.
So while the Wendy's on campus has a contract with the universities or Carolina Dining Services, the Chancellor does hold the power to ultimately get the contract cut. And so for anyone that's interested and is listening, if they would like to call, this is again the number for the Office of the Chancellor. The phone number is 919-962-1365. Again, 919-962-1365. And if you would like to help us out and call the Carolina Dining Services, their phone number, which this line is open Monday through Friday from 9 to 5 p.m., And the phone number for the Carolina Dining Services is 1-800-862-6325. Again, 1-800-862-6325. And
6825?
6325.
6325.
She will repeat it throughout the program.
Yeah, so the Carolina Dining Service, so they don't have cooks there or anything, that's one of these corporations that brings the food to campus?
You mean cooks in what sense?
They're sort of a corporation in and of themselves, a dining
Do
service.
they provide food?
Oh, the Carolina Dining Services is like what the overarching name of the thing is, but they do have different restaurants on campus besides
Yeah.
Wendy's, and then they do have the
So there's
dining
different
halls.
restaurants, so
Yes.
they like the middleman.
Yeah, but they also have a dining, do they have a dining
they have
room?
dining
They
halls.
serve food,
Yeah,
and they contract out
but they used to have a dining room where they had cooks there.
cooks and union workers.
And union workers, the cafeteria workers. And,
Right.
and because they were fighting for justice and fair wages, they started privatizing it and bringing in, so there's a history that has gone on. That's what I was
Yeah.
trying to get a handle on
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Yeah,
By the way, you talked coming in, very important, that many of us are part of the Raise Up 15. So we're not only talking about the help for the farm workers and a fair food program, but we're also talking about fighting for decent wages, because Wendy's doesn't pay its people very well either.
Yeah.
And the irony is that Walmart's signs on, or McDonald's, and they don't pay their workers that serve the food a living wage. So if you want to just comment on that, because we're working on both campaigns together.
yeah. So one of the questions that we get a lot on campus when we have the campaigns regarding the boycott Wendy's is what's going to happen to the employees that work at the Wendy's on campus. I think if anyone has ever walked by Wendy's, or people that eat at the Wendy's on campus, or just the employees in general themselves are very, very sweet people. So I think when it comes to the Boycott Wendy's campaign, a lot of students are kind of hesitant to get on board with it because they don't know what's going to happen to the employees who are employed under CDS, not technically Wendy's itself. So a lot of people always ask us, well, what's going to happen to the employees? You know, I love XYZ employee, they're so nice, they're really sweet. And what we're trying to do with the campaign is get Wendy's off campus, not target the employees themselves. The employees have, they're, you could say, at the bottom of the tier when it comes to the Wendy's chain. So we're not targeting the employees. We don't want them to lose their jobs. In fact, we would love for them to get a living wage. It's very important that everyone can have a wage that allows for, the basic necessities where they're not having to struggle having 2 or 3 jobs. But yeah, we get that question a lot. What's going to happen to the Wendy's employees? I don't know if Leslie remembers, but we used to have, I think, Starbucks in the student stores, and then when Starbucks had all of their issues regarding the racism that was happening in their establishments, UNC, what they did is they kept the workers, and they just changed the Starbucks from a Starbucks to what we have now, which is Stone and Leaf Cafe. So what we picture as students in SFA, and I don't know if Leslie can attest to this, is we would like to see a transition similar to that, where the CDS employees and the employees that you find at Wendy's don't lose their job. They either get placed in another one of the facilities underneath CDS, and while a new restaurant comes in and takes their place, and then they can of course either decide to go back to whatever facility or fast food restaurant takes Wendy's place, or they can be move to someplace else. We're not targeting them. We don't want them to lose their jobs. That's not our goal. It's just to have Wendy's taken off campus.
So that's a good answer that you can give the students, which is so nice that they are concerned about the workers, but you can let them know that that's not what your campaign is to do, and that you will work to have them transfer to some other job on campus. Yeah, good for you guys. You're really giving a lot of thought to this whole thing. Yeah.
You want to repeat that number again, those numbers?
Yeah. So we're gonna repeat the numbers. So this is to target the UNC Chapel Office of the Chancellor. And so this number is 919-962-1365. Again, 919-962-1365. And then we have the UNC Carolina Dining Services number, and that's 1-800-862-6325. 1-800-862-6325, and that you can call that from 9 to 5 on Monday through Friday, Monday to Friday.
So if you didn't get to write those numbers down, we're gonna repeat them, but right now, everybody can catch their breath, we're gonna take a station break.
This is Will's Wake Up Call on WCOM LP, Chapel Hill and Carver, 103.5 FM. You can stream us live at WCOMFM.org.
I just wanna mention again, we're here on May Day, it's International Workers' Day. It started actually in this country in 1886, 3 days before the Haymarket riots. And so it's got a very long and proud tradition. And it went from here to Europe, but it's still here. Sometimes it's been limping, but it's still here. And we have with us Miriam Thompson, who is a staunch union person with the AFL-CIO, and she was there in Raleigh this morning helping get water to the teachers. The teachers were there fighting for justice, not only for wages for themselves, but for all the support staff, but also for the students, mainly, for that the schools meet the students' needs, and that teachers are not expected to be counselors, nurses, social service agencies, but that they can actually keep their teaching skills up and do a good teaching job. And they're there for us all to support our public schools, which are under threat all over the country, but especially too in this state, with a legislature that is trying to privatize the schools with vouchers, increasing the number of charter schools. There had been a cap at 100, and they lifted that cap in the past year or so, and it's, I think, more than doubled. And so our public schools are under threat from many directions, and so we're here today to speak up for public schools and to speak up for workers. So we're so delighted to have two students with us, Leslie and Norma, who are undergraduates but are already staunch activists working for farm workers particularly, and particularly for the Immokalee workers who pick the tomatoes. And we're so glad that you could come. I know this is finals right now, and I'm so glad you could take time out and spread the word to our listeners about the work you're doing.
I want to also say that the Immokalee workers and the students stood with us in support of the Farm Labor Organizing Committee,
Yeah.
another group of farm workers that are struggling under slave conditions, housing hovels. So
Yes.
we're working to really bring a whole community together in support of decent wages and decent working conditions. And I'm glad you mentioned you might want to talk more about it, because I know they don't have a union, but they do have the council that really takes grievances. So wherever a farm worker, if you could talk more about that, what kind of work they do, who they can call in case they have a grievance.
And I have another thing that we didn't mention along with the other the difficulties with being a farm worker is pesticides. I know we've kind of focused at times on the tobacco workers, which is one of the most poisonous jobs you can have. You can get nicotine poisoning just from the liquid juice that comes out of those plants. And I imagine picking tomatoes, I would be surprised if they don't use pesticides, so that can be, I know, another issue. If this is something that the council checks on, like how much pesticides are, because I know sometimes there's insufficient water being given to workers out in the fields, insufficient protection from pesticides.
I'm not sure if they focus on that at all. We haven't, I don't think I've heard of them focusing necessarily on pesticide use, although it is a huge problem. And I think it's very important, especially like for me, like an environmental studies
Yes,
student,
yes.
like and like just thinking about the environmental justice movement, which actually started here in North Carolina in Warren County in like the 70s.
What started here,
Their environmental justice, like the concept of environmental justice in the movement.
Oh,
right.
great.
Yeah.
In Warren County.
Yeah, Warren County. Because they wanted to put like I forgot exactly what happened, but it was something to do with landfills, and they wanted to dispose of this material in the landfills.
Oh, is that what they were going to be dumping stuff in the
Yeah.
at night in the roadways? Some chemicals. Yeah, we both have a vague memory of
Yeah.
how that started, because I think I remember back, that was quite a few years ago, 20 or more years ago.
Yeah, it was in the 1970s, and
Oh, even further back.
yeah, and they wanted to put it, and it was like particularly notable because they wanted to put it in. It was like, I think Warren County still is one of the poorest counties in North Carolina,
Yes.
and also it is majority African American, and so that kind of just started the environmental justice program. So like thinking about pesticides in fields, I know there's a really good book on that called Tomatoland.
What is it called again?
Tomatoland.
Tomatoland.
Yeah, I forgot who the author is, but I read a few chapters of it, and it's really good, although it is very honest and raw, and it's very sad because it does not shy away from like miscarriages and things like that tend to happen due to the pesticides that farm workers don't even get told. They just get told, spray this around. They don't get told that that's dangerous. In the book, there's like a couple scenes where they sort of like a farm worker gets told to spray something around, but like the people who know that these pesticides are in fact harmful, they like are wearing like full body suits and wearing like things on, and so also the issue is that a lot of farm workers don't really speak English, and in addition, some don't really speak Spanish either. They speak like either like Creole or like an indigenous language, and so they are unable to communicate. Like even if one of the farm workers knows, then it's like difficult to communicate these things. So they are offered no protection. They are not informed that these chemicals are harmful, and as a result, they suffer very negative consequences, health consequences.
Yes, that's what I was thinking of. That I had read about that too, where they're told to do the spraying, not giving any of the protection, don't really know what they're spraying, and they just give them the stuff to spray and have no idea very often how dangerous, and given no protective clothing. So there's just so, when people are vulnerable like that, there's just so many ways that they're exploited, and that's why I particularly admire you all at such a young age to get involved and to care so deeply about it.
How were you go back again, how were you introduced? You said in your classroom, so I'm interested, not only teachers in the public schools, but public higher education, bringing some of these important crusades to the attention of students and engaging them in movement work.
Yeah, so I got introduced to it like in a class, and the professor's name is Angela Stacey, and she's always with us. She's open to helping us, and she's a great organizer, and she's really cool and a nice professor. So I'm pretty sure, like, if you look her up, she'll be happy to answer your questions. Don't quote me on that, but she's really nice.
So what's your last name?
Stacey, Stuessese.
Uessee.
Steve.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll thank you. We may knock on her door one of these days, because we've had a couple of really progressive faculty on our show in the past, but it's always good to find another one that we haven't had on, because they're, again, look at what an impact she's had on young lives, and it's so important. And again, for you, Norma?
So as I said in my spring semester last year, or last spring semester I guess, I was in Dr. Osterwild's class, who I believe you've had come speak with you, if I'm correct.
What's it, Dr.
Dr. Osterwild, probably mispronouncing
Oh,
it.
yes,
Oh,
McCall.
Osterwald.
McCall, yes, yes.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
So McCall's a revolutionary.
Yes. Oh, boy.
Yes, I was in her global studies class, and
Oh, wow.
she had one of her former students who now works in the SAF, I believe is the acronym, offices in Raleigh.
Oh,
and she
Student
had-
Action for Farm Workers.
Yes, she had one of her former students who works there come speak in our class, and she brought a bunch of different materials and just talked to us about what the movement was and how we could join into it, and so that's how I got exposed to it.
Yeah, that's so inspiring to me that good teachers like that, what a ripple effect, they can affect so many lives.
And then you affect others.
And you,
So it
yeah,
multiplies.
yeah.
It really multiplies. What do you hope to do with your political consciousness and your work in political science and environmental justice? And you have you're going into your senior year.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll have to have you back on.
I can go, you can go, feel free. Yeah, I wasn't really sure what to major in, but I chose environmental studies because I also wanted to do like a minor in food studies. Food is something that I'm just interested in, so like all aspects of food, and mostly like a lot like with food justice and access to food and sustainable food systems.
Wow.
And fair food mostly. It's like one of my it's my passion, I guess. Yeah, my passion. And so I guess what I hope to do with it, I'm not really sure what I'll do with it, but I know this is something that I want to continue to do. I know that even if like after I graduate, I still want to, you know, like inform people about the campaign, maybe help out students after if I have time. Things like that. I know that's what I want to continue to do. But I think what I really want to do is sort of combine these two worlds within like the food system of like people who care about like sustainable food in the sense of like environmental sustainability, but also people who care about fair food. And I feel like those two things are rarely combined in a sense. It's like an either or, especially I feel like it's like that at UNC. Most people are like all about like organic, fair, local stuff.
Yeah.
Not fair. Like they're like about local organic stuff, but they necessarily think about fair.
So they want good quality, but they're not thinking about the justice angle.
And the workers.
Exactly.
And the
Right.
workers, yeah.
And what I really want to do is to put those things together because I know both sides do care about these issues. So putting them together would really help us move forward.
You know, I think you have a great career ahead of you because this is something more and more people are getting interested in. And so you're right at the threshold of what's deep concern to many people, and I'm sure that you're not going to have any problem getting a foothold in a career like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Whether it's a career or a mission.
We're a
You know,
mission,
not only
yeah.
work, but, you know, many of us do work for money and then
Yeah.
work because it's our love and our passion, and if you can put both together.
If you can put both
But
together,
I think it's connecting worker justice and food
And
justice and
food.
environmental justice. It's one and the same, and you're right.
Yeah.
People don't necessarily make the connection, and we don't have the kind of media that makes, you know, that helps bring people into the classroom so they study this stuff. So what did you want to do, Norma?
Well, I'm a global studies and political science major, so I focus a lot on just like, in global studies I focus a lot on Latin America and like Latin America's relation to the US, and a lot of farm workers are Latin American. And then political science, focus on politics. My goal is to ultimately go to law school, and either, right now I'm leaning more towards immigration law, which, as
Wow.
you mentioned, a lot of the farm workers are immigrants, and a lot of times they're very reluctant to voice their opinions and to voice what has happened to them because of their immigration status and the fact that they could be deported for, you know, going up to somebody and telling them, hey, like this issue is going on or this experience happened to me. So I think my goal, not only with immigration and helping immigrants, is also realizing that a lot of farm workers need immigration lawyers that, are well aware of the issues going on in the farm and like in the fields, and that are not only aware of it but are willing to go out there and actually help them. Actually, the CIW and the Fair Food Program have their own lawyers, so maybe doing something with them in law in that sense. But if not, I would also like to get involved in politics. I think having someone, like I said, that is aware of the issues that farm workers face and has that political connection would also be like really helpful to the movement, and just to really helpful in bringing awareness to the fact that these issues are, like, slavery is still very much present in today's society, even though we often correlate that with slavery in the past. It's like, no, it's still very much present, and we need lawyers and we need politicians who are aware of these issues and are willing to make a difference and are willing to actually stand up for what's right.
Great, so law and maybe politics too, because I mean, this is, right now is, again, you're at the threshold of this great movement to get more women. I mean, we're more than half the population, and yet we're not represented. Some nations that would surprise us have better representation of women in their parliaments or, congresses than we have. So this is so encouraging. I mean, I think young people, especially with the whole thing about climate change, so I guess that also impacts your thinking of the environment and food, and also is that something that you're thinking about or have some ideas about? Right now, a lot of young people, even as young as Greta Thunberg, what, she's 15 or 16 now, is inspiring us all. Because climate change is also going to impact food and what kind of food's available.
Yeah, climate change affects a lot of things. It can affect like the way, like the length of the seasons,
And bugs, what bugs are coming into what areas.
Yeah, and so one of the there's a lot of issues associated. I can't even begin to list them all, but
I also think you have to, it isn't just climate and the planet. These people face climate disaster and disruption
Absolutely.
every day. So I like
That's
people
what
to
climate
think
change, the
that's right, but
consequences.
people have to be on the ground. It isn't 30 years from now. It's people suffering right now as a result of abuses, in their workplace. So I think the two of you are extraordinary models. I should tell you, by the way, that there are important people that we want to put you in touch with that would be excited about the work you're doing, and especially around immigrant rights. And I think, and lawyers who are doing that kind of work, I think it would eat you up. And maybe you want to give those numbers again. And you took some notes. I did want to say, I'm sorry, I'm switching back and forth, but
Well, they have two mics too, so you.
Okay, well, that's all right. I want to.
Yeah, but move your mics up close to you because you'll be
just
heard
want to
much
say,
better if
you need to.
Don't kiss them, but move them up closer.
I'm sure you do social media and stuff on Facebook and so on, but many of our people still read online editions of the newspapers, and I would really encourage you to write, and people who are listening should write. We listened to an important program today and featured 2 students, and you'll give your names again, and I think it would get coverage. So I would urge you to do that, put some of the stuff in some of the online editions as well as social media. All right. By the way, the paid, I just wanted to read won agreements with 14 major retailers. And I want to underscore the important point you made that students were raising, that it's also about the workers who are left paying. But these same people that are buying into like Walmart's and McDonald's and Whole Foods, well, Whole Foods pays a fairly decent wage, but some of the other fast food shops not only treat their farm workers lousy, but they don't give a living wage to the people who serve their customers. But paid farm workers more than $25 million in fair food program bonuses, and addressed more than 1,700 worker complaints. I mean, so this
is the council.
This is the Fair Food Council, and I want to say the fairfoodprogram.org. Go on their website, get more information
Yeah.
that we've been introduced.
I'd
by the
also like
students.
to ask both of you, what sort of response, you reported about some of the students really being concerned what's going to happen to workers with the campaign. Tell us a little bit about the mood on campus and how responsive students are to the issues, and are they apathetic, or you get a good response, or what happens? Tell us about the campus a little bit and what your take on it is about how.
I think I'm gonna say, well, at least for me, that's probably the hardest part of the campaign. So people, honestly, they just don't care. You can tell them, but you can't force them to listen. You can inform them. You can even try to say in like the main area of campus, and like give them free stuff, and they still won't listen to you.
They won't.
And it's just like, I don't know, it's like discouraging sometimes, because it's like, what do we have to do for you to listen to us and to learn about this? Like, we're open. You can ask any of us. We're really nice. We'll like tell you about the campaign. We're happy to inform you. And so that's very discouraging that like a lot of people don't want to, necessarily have things to do with it. One time we had an event, and like there were like a couple of like football players, and then we were talking about it, like, hey, would you guys like to hear about the Boycott Wendy's campaign? And they just kind of walked away, and they were like, no, we like Wendy's. And it's like, okay, like you didn't even listen to us.
Yes.
That's just a little rude, I think.
Very.
Could have like listened to us and then said, well,
I like Wendy's.
I like Wendy's. Like, at least listen to us. Like,
Yeah, you can like Wendy's, but the food, but
yeah.
And what about you? What do you? What do you find, a similar thing, or?
I think, yeah, similarly, I think a lot of people have, because of the events we've had and the marches and the boycotts and just being out, like as Leslie said, in the pit, which is like the main area everybody walks through, and just having events and handing out flyers, people are very much aware of the issue, or they've heard of the campaign, but I don't think people necessarily want to become like an active part of it. They're just like, yeah, I'm gonna boycott Wendy's because, we say clout, which means just like, because of the clout, which is basically they want the recognition. It's like, oh, I'm this righteous person that fights for human rights because I have a boycott Wendy's pin or a boycott Wendy's sticker. But people don't necessarily want to be out like in the forefront, doing radio shows or going out and like giving speeches and handing out flyers and stuff. So it's really, really hard, because there's this association where we're college students and we have a lot of stuff that we do care about, but not everyone. People put up the excuse for time. It's like, oh, well, I don't have time to go to the meetings. I don't have time to like help out with the events. But I think a lot of it also is like people do like Wendy's on campus, and I don't think it's necessarily because their food is that great, because it's not really that great. Like before I became part of the SFA, I would eat at Wendy's and I'm like, yeah, it's a burger. But
They're not even good burgers.
yeah, I think one of the issues that we find is that a lot of people like Wendy's because of the convenience that it's open really,
That's
really
right.
late in comparison to the other like fast food restaurants or just like the dining halls that close. I think we call it the bottom of Lenoir. It has a bunch of has Chick-fil-A, who also has its issues. It has like Emirates and like all these other like Mediterranean and Indian food, and like it has Asian food. But it closes at 5 p.m. So, after 5 p.m. you can't really eat there, so you have to eat at the dining halls, who close at like 8:30. Whereas Wendy's is open till like 2 or 3 in the morning. 3.
So they got a real in with that.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I think that's what
They don't really have competition after 5.
No, they do not. We have an Alpine Bagels, but it's also kind of like expensive and pricier compared to Wendy's. So I think that's
Yeah.
another issue that we find, is that students that do care are also like, well, I'm a college student, I don't have a lot of money.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'd rather, maybe Wendy's does, they're not part of the Fair Food Program, and they do allow human rights abuses in their like supply chain, but I'd rather pay like $4 for $4 than have to go somewhere else and pay a lot more.
That sounds like something to go to the chancellor about. Why is Wendy's having such a competitive advantage when you could have, so a burrito place, a taco place that could have some inexpensive food too. That's interesting. So your experience is a little more positive in that some of the students show some concern, And it is hard to get people to really get in the forefront. I mean, even as adults, I mean, we can have a vigil uptown, and there'll be 5 or 10 of us out there, and some people are interested and some people aren't. It's never easy when you're advocating against the status quo.
It's also, though, I think you guys are very creative.
Yeah.
Because I think you don't have to have them right away boycott, but they can
That's
go
right.
in and sign a postcard.
Oh, it's just
Or they
a
can
petition.
talk, or they can talk to the workers saying, we're on your side, but we think you're being exploited by the very people that are exploiting farm workers. I think after this program, and we talked to Alex about it and the two of you, I'd really love to continue this conversation, because I think there's something for everyone to do. Even a student that you think might not be in that bloody football player, or hockey player or whatever. But signing a
That may be a
postcard.
hopeless cause,
Signing-
the football players, but it sounds like there's other students who have expressed concern for the workers.
And they might be football players too, I don't want to dismiss football
Yeah.
players.
Well,
But I'm just saying,
I'm
we
gonna
need,
go ahead and dismiss
right,
them.
we need to think of something that everyone can do. And so it isn't just a matter of trying to sell them, but
That's
here's
right.
something you can, and with a face. There's a story of a 10-year-old. This child is working in the fields
Yes.
for a Wendy's, farm, and we want to stop this child. We want the child to be in school. Let's
Some
think
posters
of
like
more
that,
emotional
yeah.
things that
With
make
some
some
stories.
stories, or do a play in the pit where people might stop because it's something unusual.
Yeah.
It's a different way of communicating. So I'd love to talk to you more about it, especially if we take up your Wendy's campaign in Carrboro.
Yeah, well, and just know, I mean, that's why we're admiring you. It's great that you not only cared, but you said, I'm gonna do something about it. That's not what every person is gonna do, but if you can get them supporting it in some way, that too it will help the cause. But, to take that leadership that you two have taken, and not everybody's gonna do that, and that's why we're so glad that you're here today. And maybe somebody who's listening will say, oh, maybe
That's
I
something
could.
I can do.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
It's really nice.
So-
I'm a great baker. I'll bake you stuff.
Oh, good. That's a deal.
Yeah, there's all kinds of ways about food, right? And some of it's preparing it and sharing it with people. That's a wonderful way that some people get their message across. I just want you to give those numbers again. We only have a couple more minutes. We end about 5 So if you want to give those numbers again and give your name again, I gave your first name. It's Norma. What's your last name?
Reyes.
Norma Reyes and Leslie Alanis. Yeah, and these are 2 undergraduates who've taken a leadership role in working for social justice for farm workers, and particularly in this Immokalee campaign for farm workers who pick tomatoes, which we all love tomatoes, and for a penny a pound can make such a difference in what the farm workers are paid. That just amazes me. So in terms of the consumer, you're not gonna lose any consumers for a penny a pound, except consumer like Wendy's who's dragging their feet. But I would love to, somebody talk, and I'm gonna call the chancellor, why is Wendy's having such a competitive advantage? Are they the only ones who are open, besides some bagels after 5?
There's also a Subway, but it's on the South Campus.
Ah,
And so it's far away in comparison to Wendy's that's in the Union, where people
Uh-huh.
study, and the Union is next to the libraries.
right.
So it's right there.
Boy, what
Yeah.
a break.
There's also
But it's also supporting someone who violates human rights.
Yeah.
This is the
I'm
interim
saying-
chancellor
yeah.
of a public university.
Absolutely.
We have to embarrass the chancellor.
Absolutely, that he's given a break to somebody who is
Right.
dragging their feet that other major corporations have signed on. So we're talking to Leslie Alanis and Norma Reyes, and I'd like one or both of you to give those numbers
Numbers
again for what our listeners can call.
You can do a duet.
I think
You
of
can
that.
sing them.
Okay.
Okay, so the number to call the Chancellor's office is 919-962-1365. Again, for the Chancellor's office, 919-962-1365.
Yeah, and this is the number for the UNC Carolina Dining Services, and that's 1-800-862-6325. Again, 1-800-862-6325, and you can call Monday through Friday from 9 to 5.
So the Carolina Dining Services may be the ones who also schedule, or the intermediary about what restaurants get what, or get what time slots, so that might be the one to call about that
Both of them.
competitive advantage
Both of
they're
them.
giving Wendy's. So Monday through Friday, 9 to 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's also a lot of, really a number of student organizations that we should introduce you to. Remember, we talked about Silent Sam and some of the anti-racist.
Oh, boy.
This is racist stuff. I mean, this
Very
is,
much.
you know, and we should, we can talk about the wall, but it
Yes,
just, I think we can help bring, when you come back, you know, to school, we can bring other students into this conversation.
Yeah.
Because it's part of the same struggle
Well, that
for
makes me
human
also
rights.
think, we're saying that, Miriam, about, is there an umbrella for the different student organizations that are working for justice? Do you have any, the Y I know used to be a place that fostered this kind of thing. Is there some kind of place where you meet with other students who are working on different campaigns for justice?
Usually, I guess that would be the Campus Y building. It's like the social justice building at school. A lot of organizations meet there. I think everybody that's concerned in any way with justice in any form would be at the Y. We would find them at the Y.
Yeah. So you have a place to get together with
Yeah.
like-minded student leaders like you all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. I want to thank Miriam Thompson, our little sister, for coming and meeting you all and helping bring you here to our radio TV show. We'll be on TV next week, but we'll be on YouTube in a few days.
Yeah. We want to thank you guys too for like having us. It's
Oh,
really
yeah.
great. Yeah.
I'm Lori Hoyt, and this is Erin Schwinzer, and Emily O'Hare is on the camera.